I want to talk about an aspect of Taiji Chuan involving the timing of the movements. And I recently found out that there's a name for this. It's called Dng and Dng. And Dong means move, initiate, activate. Dng means swing. And it's a very important part of the movements, and it's tremendously enhanced my practice to understand it. And so I'd like to explain it, and I think I can do it in a way where almost anybody can get this pretty quickly. And I found out also that there's a translation of one of Cheng-Men Ching's books called Cheng-Men Ching's Advanced Taiji Chuan Instructions. And on page 47, Professor Chang discusses Dong and Dang. And in the editor's translator's note on page Roman numeral 2, this is what Douglas Weil, who is the compiler and translator of the book, says. He says that Cheng's original form instructions contain a number of principles not found as such in the Taiji classics and rarely heard today. Let us pry just one gem from its setting by way of example. The concept of movement and swing, Dong and Dang. And it's explained in his new method under the instructions for Grasp Sparrow's Tail and important points of self-study. This principle, if properly understood, can revolutionize one's execution and experience of the form. And he goes on to talk about it a little bit more. And I think that this is very important, not only from what Douglas Weil said, but also what my own experience. So when we learn Taiji, the first thing we're taught is not to move the hands independently of the body as I am. That's independent motion. It's not unified movement. So we're told to have everything together. So the movement becomes this, see? And then this. And the what I call Kodak moments are emphasized, holding a ball, etc. And this, touching, all these things. And it's done very slowly, so you don't feel that swing. But when you do it more spiritedly, and as you get more advanced and much more relaxed, much more able to let the joints open up, then a different thing happens. And then the movements become more like this, which is much more in line with the principles of non-action, continuity, circularity, yin and yang, and much more exhilarating to do. So let me use this inanimate object as an example. This is a rod, a 3/4-inch PVC pipe, about 3 feet long, and I drilled a hole in the end, near the end, and put a metal rod through and 2 knobs, so the rod can swing freely, can pivot about this point. And I measured the period, the time for one swing. It's pretty close to 1.5 seconds. And if you let it swing a number of times, the amplitude keeps decreasing. And the reason for that is there's friction. There's friction with the air. Each time it moves, the air is moving, it's moving against the air. The pivot has some friction in it, not much. And also, when it swings this way, it pushes my hand this way. When it swings the other way, etc. And I'm sort of preventing that from happening, not totally. So I'm absorbing some of the energy. So let's look at what goes on with this. When I lift this up, I'm putting energy into this. I'm doing work, and it's lifting this up, and that's called potential energy. The reason it's called potential energy is because, which is yin, because if I let go, gravity will pull it back. But at that point, it doesn't come to a stop. It's already moving the fastest it's going to move. And so it keeps moving up until it gets almost to the same point on the other side. The movement is yang. So yin, yang, etc. And now if I take this rod and I try to move it at 1-to-1 at its rate of, or it's at a rate which is 1.5 seconds per swing, a little energy goes into it. I'm moving my hand a lot. The rod is barely swinging very much. But now if I get ahead, now watch what happens. It's going up so high that I'm almost losing it. And so why does that happen? And there's a reason, a simple reason that you'll understand, because it's very intuitive. The part I'm holding has to move with my hand, pretty much. But the rest of the rod has inertia, meaning it's sluggish. So it tends to lag behind. So for example, if I pull my hand this way, watch the low end of what the low end of the rod does. See, when it momentarily went up. And the reason for that is this end has to move with my hand, but the rest of the rod is sluggish, so it lags behind and it comes up. And so if I do this, if I do this, this, and stop it, now it should swing up to this height on the other side. If I also pull it and it swings up and I continue to pull it, now not only did I give it potential energy, but I'm also giving it kinetic energy, energy of movement. So it'll swing higher. So if I do this, see how much higher it went. And that's what I'm doing with the rod when I'm getting it to swing this way. At each point, I'm putting energy in instead of this, just 1-to-1. So my hand has to be ahead. And if you look closely at this, which is hard for the regular speed, but if it's slowed down there'll be a video which is, you'll see that I change direction when it reaches the bottom. So I pull it, it goes up, I give it motion, now it comes down, and at that point I start the other direction, do the same thing on the other side. And each time I'm putting in more and more energy, and it keeps getting larger and larger. Well, this is inanimate, and it also is just one piece, whereas my limbs have two sections, but that doesn't matter. The same thing would apply. And let's see how that works with the Taiji movements. Let's say I just finished doing the beginning movement, and now it's time to do ward off left. If I let the shoulder completely relax, when I shift to the left, there'll be a little lag, but then my arm will start moving and move out a little bit more than just the hanging, a little bit. I'll exaggerate. Now I move forward. My shoulders, the pivot point is pulling it. Now it's giving it more motion. So here, if I just stopped, it would come up to here. But now, because I moved, it comes up higher. But then I change direction, and it brings it up here. So this is what the movement looks like. If I do the next movement, I turn, see it's coming up, it's moving this way. Not only does it have motion, but I'm turning oppositely. That's going to open this up and stretch it. So it's here, and now this gets pulled forward. So I don't have to bring it forward. The movement of the body does it. There's an elastic effect. And now when I sit back, my arms get longer. They're sluggish, so they lag behind. Now they start getting pulled. And I can feel the stretch, and now it starts to compress. That's when I start going forward. And then I sit back, and my arms go out. Single whip. I'm pulling my arms. I'm not just moving my arms with my body. I'm letting them have their natural movement. Now they have motion this way. I change direction. Change direction again when this hand is in. So I change direction when this hand's at the top and this hand is out. And then change direction again when this hand is at the bottom and this hand is in. And that propels it even more. See? So it's the same thing in each move. Every move has this Dong and Dng. So here, let me just do the movements and you'll see. I'm barely doing anything. I'm just regulating the timing, which I can feel. And that will depend also on the rate of doing the movements. If I do it slowly, the timing will be a little bit different. But it should still be there. When you understand this, you will see how much of an addition it is to doing these movements, how exhilarating it becomes. So here are some exercises that you can do to experience this. Having the arm hang is the best because you can loosen the shoulder. You don't have to think of the arm, just let it be almost inanimate. And I'm circling, I'm shifting, and I just observe the movement that happens, and I observe how I have to move, the timing of it, and the rate to maximize the swing of my arm. That's the horizontal movement. It's in the single whip here. Same thing. And notice that when it's at the closest, I change. When it's at the furthest, I change. Change direction. Here, same thing. That's horizontal. Frontal is in, for example, cloud hands, which you can do without stepping. So when the hands are here is when I change direction. Hands are here, I change direction. What holds for one hand will hold for the other. That's the way these movements have been designed. See? That's the frontal movement. Sagittal movement is this. So raise hands, or hands playing the pipa. So you can practice these movements. When it gets to the top, I'm changing. When it gets to the bottom is when I'm changing. That's when it's at the natural rate. If it's slower, the changeover is a little later. See, later. So when you do brush knee, this arm comes down, you turn. Now is when I turn back and step. I don't do this, and then step, and then do that. It's all happening, timed based on the swing. So you really need to experiment with this, feel it, recognize it, lock in the feeling, then recreate it, and then practice it. And eventually, very quickly, you'll get this. My students have gotten this very quickly, now that I'm able to explain it. Thank you.